Hey there, welcome to Dr. Pickleface, the place for crazy stories you won't forget. If you like big surprises, wild drama, and little sweet revenge, you're in the right spot. Subscribe and jump into tales that will make you gasp, laugh, and keep you watching for more. Fun characters, shocking twists, and endings that feel so good. That's Dr. Pickleface. Hit the bell and let's start the fun.
All this time.
Graham Eastbrook's hands trembled as he held the second phone, watching his wife Lydia and her lover mock him in a video shot inside his own workshop. The timestamp showed it was recorded 3 days ago, while he was installing a grandfather clock for the Hendersons downtown. In the grainy footage, Wade Kestrel whispered something that made Lydia laugh before saying, "Graham thinks I'm at book club. God, he's so pathetic." The phone slipped from Graham's fingers, clattering onto the kitchen counter. 23 years of marriage, 2 daughters he'd put through school, a mortgage he'd never missed. And this is what it came to, being called pathetic by his own wife while she entertained another man in the sacred space where he crafted timepieces with his bare hands. Graham poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the evidence of his betrayal. The house felt different now, like a clock whose mainspring had snapped. Everything looked the same. Lydia's coffee mug still sat by the sink, her romance novels stacked on the counter, family photos smiling from the refrigerator, but the rhythm was broken. The comfortable tick of his life had become an irregular, dying wheeze. He picked up the phone again and scrolled through months of messages. Wade wasn't just any affair partner. He was Lydia's regional manager at Coastal Logistics, married until 6 months ago, currently under investigation by the company's fraud department, according to one particularly revealing text where Lydia called him my dangerous bad boy. The messages got worse. Screenshots from their daughter's social media with cruel commentary, mocking his habit of explaining how clocks worked, laughing about his boring job while he paid for everything. The final insult came in a message from 2 weeks ago. Joan says I should just leave him, says he's holding me back from being the woman I could be. Joan, his mother. Graham's bourbon glass stopped halfway to his lips. His 72-year-old mother, the woman who'd raised him alone after his father died, had been advising his wife to leave him. He scrolled frantically through the messages until he found the thread between Lydia and Joan, dozens of conversations spanning 8 months. "Graham doesn't appreciate you," Joan had written in March. "You're still young enough to start over. A woman needs passion, not just stability." In April, "The girls are old enough to understand. They see how he ignores your needs." In June, "Wade sounds like exactly what you deserve. Don't let Graham's guilt trip stop you from living." His own mother, the woman whose medical bills he'd paid without question, whose prescriptions he picked up every Tuesday, who had Sunday dinner at his table every week for 15 years. Graham set down his bourbon and walked to his workshop, a converted garage behind the house where he'd spent countless evenings repairing antique timepieces and building custom clocks for wealthy clients. The space smelled of machine oil and aged wood, cluttered with tiny gears, springs, and tools inherited from his grandfather. This was where he came to think, to create, to find peace in the precise mechanical ballet of escapements and pendulums. Wade had defiled this space. Graham could see exactly where they'd been, on the old leather sofa, where he sometimes napped between projects. The coffee table was slightly askew, and he noticed a wine stain on the armrest that hadn't been there before. He sat at his workbench and opened his laptop, fingers moving across the keyboard with the same methodical precision he used to adjust clockwork. First, he changed all the passwords to their joint accounts. Then he transferred funds from checking to a private account Lydia didn't know about, an old savings account from before they were married that he'd kept for emergencies. This qualified as an emergency. By 3 in the morning, Graham had researched Wade Kestrel thoroughly, divorced 8 months ago after his wife Eleanor discovered he'd been embezzling from client accounts, currently living in a rental apartment on Maple Street, driving a leased BMW he couldn't afford, and apparently dating his subordinate while under investigation for financial fraud. Graham made a list in his neat handwriting. 1. Document everything. 2. Secure assets. 3. Contact Eleanor. 4. Expose the truth. 5. Consequences. He spent the next hour transferring important documents to a safety deposit box he'd opened years ago but never used. Birth certificates, insurance policies, the deed to the house, financial records, everything Lydia might need to destroy evidence or claim innocence. When dawn broke over Chapel Street, Graham made coffee and eggs as if nothing had changed. Lydia came downstairs at 7:30, hair still perfect from yesterday's salon appointment, wearing the silk robe he'd bought her for Christmas. "Morning, honey," she said, kissing his cheek with the same lips that had been on Wade Kestrel 3 days ago. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby," Graham replied, handing her a cup of coffee. "What's on your schedule today?" "Oh, just the usual. Department meeting at 10, lunch with Sarah from accounting, then that regional planning session with Wade and the team." She sipped her coffee, eyes scanning her phone. "Might run late. Don't wait up." "Of course not," Graham said. "I'll probably work late too. The Morrison anniversary clock is giving me trouble." Lydia nodded absently, already typing a message. Graham watched her fingers dance across the screen, probably telling Wade about her day, maybe planning their next encounter in his workshop. After she left for work, Graham called his client's schedule and canceled his morning appointments. He had research to do. Eleanor Kestrel lived in a modest duplex on the other side of town, in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Graham had found her address through public records and discovered she was a forensic accountant who'd testified in Wade's divorce proceedings. If anyone knew about Wade's criminal activities, it would be his ex-wife. Graham parked across the street and watched Eleanor's house for 30 minutes, studying her routine. She emerged at 8:45, a thin woman in her early 40s with prematurely gray hair and sharp eyes. She wore a business suit and carried herself with the rigid posture of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. He followed her to a small accounting firm downtown, then waited until lunch to approach her outside a sandwich shop. "Excuse me," Graham said, intercepting her path. "Eleanor Kestrel, my name is Graham Eastbrook. I think we need to talk about your ex-husband." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Are you a reporter? Because I've already told everyone I'm not making any more statements about Wade's." "He's having an affair with my wife," Graham interrupted, "and I think you might be interested in what I've discovered about his current activities." Eleanor studied his face for a long moment. "Buy me lunch," she said finally, "and tell me everything." They sat in a corner booth at Romano's Deli while Graham explained the situation. Eleanor listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes on a small pad she produced from her purse. "Wade hasn't changed," she said when Graham finished. "He's still the same manipulative fraud he was when we were married. The only difference is now he's someone else's problem." "The investigation at Coastal Logistics," Graham said. "How serious is it?" Eleanor smiled grimly. "Serious enough that the FBI is involved. Wade's been skimming from client shipping accounts for 2 years. Small amounts, spread across hundreds of transactions. Very clever, actually. He might have gotten away with it if he hadn't gotten greedy." "How greedy?" $200,000, give or take. Enough for a federal case if they can prove intent. Eleanor leaned forward. "What exactly are you planning to do with this information?" Graham met her gaze. "I'm going to destroy him, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of man my wife chose over her family." "That's a dangerous path," Eleanor warned. "Are you sure you want to go down it?" "I've been going down it since I found that phone," Graham replied. "The question is whether you're interested in helping me finish what the FBI started." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, stirring her soup absently. "Wade cost me everything," she said finally. "My house, my savings, my faith in people. If there's a way to make him pay for what he's done, I'm listening." Graham outlined his plan. Eleanor would provide documentation of Wade's financial crimes, evidence that hadn't been admitted in their divorce but might be useful in other ways. In exchange, Graham would share what he discovered about Wade's current activities, including his relationship with Lydia. "There's something else," Eleanor said as they prepared to leave. "Wade's rental agreement expires next month, and he can't qualify for a mortgage because of the investigation. He's been bragging to mutual friends about having a backup plan if things go south." "What kind of backup plan?" "The kind that involves a woman with a house and a stable income." Eleanor handed Graham her business card. "Your wife might think she's having an affair. Wade's planning his next con." That evening, Graham waited for Lydia to come home, watching the clock on the mantel, one of his own creations, a wedding gift he'd spent 3 months perfecting. The hands moved with mechanical precision, marking time until his wife returned from another lie. Lydia arrived at 9:30, cheeks flushed and hair slightly mussed. "How was the planning session?" Graham asked from his chair by the window. "Productive," she said, avoiding his eyes. "Wade has some interesting ideas for expanding our client base." "I'm sure he does." Graham closed his book. "I've been thinking about our finances. With Marissa's mortgage and Carly's tuition, we should probably tighten our belts a bit." Lydia froze in the doorway. "What do you mean?" "Just being practical. Maybe we don't need to eat out so much. Cancel some of those subscription services, responsible adult stuff. Graham, you're scaring me. Is something wrong at work? He looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman he'd married had been honest, hard-working, someone who appreciated security and stability. This woman was calculating, selfish, someone who took everything for granted while plotting to throw it all away. Nothing's wrong, Graham said. I'm just trying to be more careful with money, more responsible. Lydia relaxed slightly. Well, that's probably smart. I should go shower. Graham watched her climb the stairs, probably rushing to wash away the evidence of her evening with Wade. He picked up his phone and scrolled through the contacts until he found his daughter Marissa's number. Dad? Marissa answered on the second ring. Is everything okay? You never call this late. Everything's fine, sweetheart. I just wanted to let you know I'll be handling the mortgage payment differently starting next month. What do you mean differently? I mean you'll be handling it yourself. It's time you took full responsibility for your financial obligations. Silence on the other end of the line. Dad, you know I can't afford the full payment. That's why we set up the arrangement where you cover half. I know what we set up, Graham said calmly. I'm changing it. But why? Did I do something wrong? Graham thought about the screenshots on Lydia's phone, the mocking messages about his boring job and pathetic personality. Did you know your mother is having an affair? Another silence, longer this time. Dad, It's a simple question, Marissa. Did you know? She mentioned she was unhappy, but I didn't think... You didn't think what? That it mattered? That I deserved to know? It's not that simple, Marissa said, her voice rising. Mom's been miserable for years. You work all the time. You never talk to her. You don't... Graham hung up. He immediately called Carly at college. She answered with loud music in the background, probably at some party. Dad, what's up? Your tuition payment for next semester has been canceled, Graham said without preamble. What? Why? Because your mother is having an affair, and you apparently think that's acceptable. The music stopped. Graham could hear Carly moving to a quieter location. Dad, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that everyone in this family knew what was happening except me. I'm talking about being treated like a walking ATM while my wife mocks me with her boyfriend. Dad, please. I don't know anything about Mom having an affair. She never told me anything like that. Graham felt a small spark of hope. Maybe Carly was innocent. Maybe she just said she was unhappy, Carly continued. And Grandma Jones said maybe it was time for her to explore other options. But I thought they meant like counseling or... Graham hung up again. Everyone knew. His mother, his wife, his daughters, everyone except the man paying for everything. He poured another bourbon and sat in his workshop, surrounded by the tools and timepieces that had been his life's work. Each clock represented hours of careful craftsmanship, attention to detail, patience. He'd built this business from nothing, created something valuable and lasting. Wade Kestrel had walked into this space and destroyed it with his presence. He'd turned Graham's sanctuary into a cheap motel room, his wife into a cheating cliché, his family into conspirators. But Wade had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed Graham was exactly what he appeared to be, a quiet, methodical man who would accept betrayal passively. Graham opened his laptop and began researching private investigators. The PI was a former police detective named Rita Vasquez, who operated out of a small office above a bail bondsman. She had good reviews online and charged reasonable rates for surveillance and evidence gathering. Standard adultery case is $500 a day plus expenses, Rita explained during their meeting. Photo documentation, video if possible, detailed timeline of activities. Most cases take a week to 10 days. This isn't a standard case, Graham said. The man she's seeing is under federal investigation for embezzlement. I need everything. His financial situation, his living arrangements, his other relationships, his criminal history. Rita raised an eyebrow. That's going to cost more. Money isn't a concern. Graham slid an envelope across her desk. There's $2,000 in cash. I'll pay another $3,000 when you deliver results. What exactly are you planning to do with this information? That depends on what you find. Rita pocketed the envelope. Fair enough. Give me 2 weeks. Graham spent those 2 weeks in a strange state of suspended animation. He went to work, ate dinner with Lydia, attended his mother's birthday party, helped Carly move into her new dorm room. On the surface, everything appeared normal. Beneath the surface, he was systematically documenting every aspect of his wife's betrayal. He installed hidden cameras in his workshop and the garage. He used GPS tracking software to monitor Lydia's phone location. He kept detailed notes of her lies and inconsistencies. Most importantly, he began liquidating assets. Small amounts at first, a few thousand here and there from accounts Lydia rarely checked. He converted the cash to gold coins and stored them in a safety deposit box, along with copies of all financial documents and evidence of the affair. Joan came to Sunday dinner as usual, bringing her famous apple pie and her toxic advice. "Graham, dear, you look tired," she said, settling into her usual chair at the head of the table. "You're working too hard." "Just keeping busy," Graham replied, carving the roast. "Someone has to pay the bills." Joan exchanged a look with Lydia. "Well, money isn't everything. Sometimes we have to consider other aspects of life. Happiness, fulfillment, personal growth." "Personal growth," Graham repeated. "That's important." "Exactly," Joan continued. "Take Lydia, for instance. She's been blossoming lately. Haven't you, dear? You seem so much more confident and alive." Lydia blushed. "Mom, Joan, you're embarrassing me. I'm just saying you deserve to be happy. Life is short, and we can't waste it being unfulfilled." Graham set down his carving knife and looked at his mother. "Are you suggesting Lydia is unfulfilled?" "I'm suggesting that sometimes we settle for less than we deserve," Joan said carefully. "Both men and women. Sometimes we stay in situations that don't serve us anymore. Situations like marriage. I'm speaking generally, of course." Graham nodded slowly. "Of course. Generally speaking, you think people should abandon their commitments when they become inconvenient." "I think people should pursue happiness," Joan said, her voice getting sharper. "Your father and I were happy together. If he hadn't died, we would have had a full life. But some people never find that kind of connection." "Some people never appreciate what they have," Graham countered. "They spend so much time looking for something better that they destroy what they already built." The table fell silent. Lydia shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Joan recovered first. "Well, I suppose we all have different perspectives on life." "We certainly do," Graham agreed. "For instance, I believe in loyalty, honesty, keeping your word. Old-fashioned concepts, apparently." After dinner, while Lydia loaded the dishwasher, Joan cornered Graham in the living room. "You need to be more attentive to your wife," she said quietly. "She's a vibrant woman with needs you're not meeting." Graham stared at his mother, this woman who'd raised him to believe in right and wrong, who'd taught him to honor his commitments and treat people with respect. "What needs would those be, Joan?" "Emotional needs, romantic needs. She needs to feel desired and appreciated." "The way Wade Kestrel makes her feel?" Joan's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." Graham stepped closer to his mother. "I think you know exactly what you've done to this family." "Graham, if you're suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts. You've been encouraging my wife to have an affair. You've been poisoning my daughters against me. You've been undermining my marriage while eating at my table and accepting my support." Joan straightened her spine. "Your wife deserves better than a man who comes home late, sits in his workshop, and ignores her emotional needs. And Wade Kestrel is better? Wade makes her feel alive." Graham felt something cold settle in his chest. "Get out of my house. Graham, get out, now, and don't come back." Joan gathered her purse and coat with wounded dignity. "You'll regret this," she said. "Lydia won't stay with a man who treats his own mother like this." "We'll see," Graham replied. After Joan left, Lydia confronted him in the kitchen. "How could you talk to your mother that way?" she demanded. "She's 72 years old, and you humiliated her. She humiliated herself. What's gotten into you lately? You've been so cold and distant. Even the girls have noticed." Graham dried his hands on a dish towel and looked at his wife. "The girls have noticed a lot of things, apparently." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. I'm going to my workshop." "Graham, wait." Lydia caught his arm. "I know things have been strained between us lately. Maybe we should talk to someone, a counselor or—" "A counselor." Graham almost laughed. "You want to go to counseling?" "I want to fix whatever's wrong between us." Graham gently removed her hand from his arm. "Some things can't be fixed, Lydia. Some things are broken beyond repair." He left her standing in the kitchen and walked to his workshop, where he locked the door and called Rita Vasquez. "Perfect timing," Rita said. "I was just about to call you. I've got everything you wanted and more." They met at a coffee shop downtown, where Rita spread photographs and documents across a corner table. Your wife and Wade Kestrel have been meeting at his apartment 3 times a week for the past month, Rita began. They also meet at your workshop when you're out on service calls. I've got video of 14 separate encounters. Graham studied the photographs. Wade was younger than expected, maybe 40, with the kind of artificial charm that worked on insecure women. In the pictures, he and Lydia looked like teenagers, all groping hands and stolen kisses. What about his financial situation? Rita pulled out a folder. Wade's broke. His ex-wife got the house, the savings, even his retirement fund. He's been living off credit cards, and that leased BMW. The lease expires next month, and he can't get approved for another one. And the federal investigation? Very real. The FBI has been building a case for 18 months. Wade's been skimming from client accounts using fake invoices and shell companies. They've got enough evidence to put him away for 5 to 10 years. When do they plan to arrest him? Rita smiled. That's the beautiful part. They're waiting for him to make one more big score. Something about letting criminals dig their own graves. Graham absorbed this information. What kind of big score? According to my sources, Wade's been bragging about a retirement plan involving a wealthy woman who's going to help him disappear before the feds move in. Lydia. That would be my guess. Your wife has access to your accounts, your assets, your business. Wade's probably planning to clean you out and skip town. Graham felt a strange sense of relief. This wasn't about love or passion or even unhappiness. This was a con job, and Lydia was just another mark. There's more, Rita continued. Wade's been in contact with your daughter Marissa. Phone calls, text messages. He's been gathering information about your family's finances. Graham's blood turned to ice. What kind of information? Bank account numbers, business income, property values, everything a smart thief would need to plan the perfect score. Rita handed him a flash drive. Everything's on here. Photos, videos, financial records, phone transcripts. Enough evidence to bury both of them. Graham pocketed the drive. What do I owe you? We're even. But Graham? Be careful what you do with this information. Wade Kestrel is not just a cheater. He's a professional criminal. If he thinks you're a threat, he might do something desperate. Graham drove home in a daze, his mind processing the implications of Rita's discoveries. Lydia wasn't just having an affair. She was being manipulated by a career criminal who planned to rob them blind and disappear. His own daughter was feeding information to the enemy. When he arrived home, Lydia was waiting in the living room with a suitcase by her feet. I'm leaving, she announced. I can't handle your coldness anymore. Joan was right. You've become impossible to live with. Graham looked at the suitcase, then at his wife. Where are you going? I'm staying with a friend until you get your head straight. This marriage is toxic, and I won't tolerate being treated like the enemy in my own home. What friend? Lydia hesitated. Just someone from work. Wade. Her face flushed. How dare you? How dare I what? How dare I figure out that my wife is having an affair with a federal criminal? How dare I discover that my own mother has been encouraging you to destroy our marriage? How dare I learn that my daughter is feeding information to your boyfriend so he can rob us blind? Lydia went very still. What are you talking about? Graham pulled out his phone and showed her one of Rita's photographs, Wade and Lydia kissing in his workshop. I'm talking about the fact that Wade Kestrel is using you to set up the perfect crime. He's not in love with you, Lydia. You're a mark, a target, a way for him to steal everything I've built and disappear before the FBI arrests him for embezzlement. Lydia stared at the photograph, her face cycling through shock, denial, and finally anger. You had me followed, she whispered. I had a criminal investigated, the criminal who happens to be sleeping with my wife. Wade isn't a criminal. He's a good man who's been falsely accused by his bitter ex-wife. Graham laughed, a harsh sound that surprised him. Eleanor Kestrel is a forensic accountant who testified against Wade in federal court. She's got documentation of every crime he committed during their marriage. The FBI is using her evidence to build their case. You talked to Eleanor? I talked to everyone. I know about the shell companies, the fake invoices, the $200,000 Wade stole from client accounts. I know about his plan to use you as his escape route. Lydia picked up her suitcase. I don't believe you. Wade loves me. Wade loves your bank account. He loves the fact that you have access to my business, my property, my assets. He's been using Marissa to gather financial information so he can clean us out and disappear. That's insane. Graham pulled up another photograph on his phone. Wade and Marissa having coffee at a downtown cafe. Your boyfriend has been meeting with our daughter for 3 weeks. They've exchanged 47 text messages about our family's finances. He knows our account numbers, our business income, even our insurance policies. Lydia dropped her suitcase. Marissa wouldn't. Marissa thinks she's helping her mother escape an unhappy marriage. She has no idea she's feeding information to a professional thief. For the first time since this conversation began, doubt crept into Lydia's eyes. Even if that's true, she said slowly, it doesn't change the fact that our marriage is broken. I'm not happy, Graham. I haven't been happy for years. So you decided to fix it by committing adultery with a federal criminal. I decided to find someone who makes me feel valued. Someone who listens to me, who appreciates me, who doesn't take me for granted. Graham stared at his wife, this woman he'd loved for 23 years, and realized she was gone. The person standing in his living room was a stranger, someone who could justify betrayal, theft, and fraud as long as it served her emotional needs. Fine, he said quietly. Go, be with Wade. But understand this, when the FBI arrests him, and they will, you'll be charged as an accessory. When he steals our money and disappears, you'll be left with nothing. When you finally realize what he really is, don't come back here looking for sympathy. Lydia picked up her suitcase and walked toward the door. Wade was right about you, she said. You're a cold, bitter man who destroys everything he touches. After she left, Graham sat in his empty house, listening to the tick of a dozen clocks marking time. He thought about the years he'd spent building a life, creating a home, providing for people who saw him as nothing more than an ATM with a pulse. He picked up his phone and called Eleanor. It's Graham, he said when she answered. I need to accelerate our timeline. What happened? Lydia moved in with Wade tonight. I think they're planning to make their move soon. How soon? I don't know, but I'm not waiting to find out. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. What do you need from me? Everything you've got on Wade's criminal activities. Bank records, transaction histories, correspondence with his accomplices. I want to bury him before he has a chance to bury me. Graham, I have to ask, are you planning to do something illegal? I'm planning to do something final. Graham spent the next week preparing. He moved all liquid assets to accounts Lydia couldn't access. He changed the locks on the house and his workshop. He installed additional security cameras and hired a lawyer to handle the divorce paperwork. Most importantly, he began compiling evidence for what he privately called the presentation, a comprehensive documentation of Wade's crimes, Lydia's betrayal, and his family's conspiracy against him. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Marissa called on Thursday evening, her voice shaking with panic. Dad, I need to talk to you, she said. Can you meet me somewhere private? They met at a diner on the outskirts of town where Marissa looked haggard and frightened. Dad, I think I made a terrible mistake, she began. Wade asked me to do something, and now I'm scared I might have broken the law. Graham's heart rate increased. What did he ask you to do? He said Mom needed help accessing some of your business accounts for the divorce. He said lawyers were expensive and she needed to secure her fair share of the assets. What kind of help? Marissa pulled out her phone and showed Graham a series of text messages. He asked me to get copies of your bank statements, your business financial records, even your insurance policies. He said he was helping Mom prepare for mediation. Graham studied the messages. Wade had been very careful to frame his requests as legal preparation, but the information he'd gathered was exactly what a thief would need to drain accounts and disappear. Marissa, I need you to listen to me very carefully, Graham said. Wade Kestrel is a federal criminal. He's been stealing money from his employer for 2 years, and the FBI is planning to arrest him. He's not helping your mother with divorce preparations. He's planning to rob us and flee the country. That's impossible. Mom loves him. She says he's the first man who's ever really understood her. Graham pulled out his phone and showed Marissa the surveillance photos. This is what your mother's great love looks like. A career criminal who specializes in seducing women with access to money. Marissa stared at the photographs, her face growing pale. Oh God, what have I done? You've given a thief everything he needs to destroy our family, Graham said gently. But it's not too late to fix it. How? Graham explained his plan. Marissa would continue her relationship with Wade, but now she'd be feeding him false information. She'd tell him about fictional accounts, inflated asset values, and fake security procedures. Meanwhile, Graham would be preparing his own surprise. I can't do this alone, Graham said. I need your help to stop him before he destroys everything we've built. Marissa nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Dad. I thought I was helping Mom be happy. You were manipulated by a professional con artist. That's not your fault. But what happens next? That's your choice. Graham spent the following week coordinating with Eleanor and Rita to set the perfect trap. Wade would get the big score he was planning, but it would be the kind of score that landed him in federal prison. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Marissa would tell Wade about a large cash withdrawal Graham was planning to make, money supposedly hidden from divorce proceedings in a private safety deposit box. Wade would follow Graham to the bank, expecting to intercept him with the cash. Instead, Wade would find FBI agents waiting with a warrant for his arrest. The timing has to be perfect, Eleanor explained during their final planning meeting. Wade has to believe he's about to pull off the perfect crime. If he suspects a trap, he'll disappear and take Lydia with him. What about my wife? Graham asked. Will she be arrested too? Probably not unless she actively participates in the theft. The FBI is primarily interested in Wade and his financial crimes. Your wife is just collateral damage. Graham nodded. After everything that had happened, he no longer cared what happened to Lydia. She'd made her choice. Now she'd live with the consequences. The trap was set for the following Tuesday. Graham made a show of visiting his bank, carrying an empty briefcase and looking nervous. Marissa had already told Wade about the secret withdrawal, and Rita confirmed that Wade was following Graham's movements. Graham parked in the bank's garage and waited. Within minutes, Wade appeared, walking casually toward the building as if he had legitimate business there. Graham's phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. FBI is in position. When Wade approaches you, start recording. Graham activated his phone's video camera and waited. Wade entered the garage and walked directly toward him, no longer pretending to be casual. Graham, Wade called out. What a coincidence running into you here. Wade. Graham turned to face his wife's lover, keeping his phone positioned to capture the conversation. I didn't expect to see you. I was just making a deposit. Wade smiled, the kind of practiced charm that probably worked on most people. How's Lydia doing? I know this divorce is hard on both of you. She's adjusting. Good. Listen, I hope there's no hard feelings between us. These things happen, you know? Sometimes people just grow apart. Graham studied Wade's face, looking for any sign of genuine emotion. He found none. This man felt nothing for Lydia except contempt for her usefulness. No hard feelings, Graham said. I just want what's fair. Of course, fair is important. Wade stepped closer, his smile becoming predatory. Speaking of fair, I understand you've been moving some assets around. Preparing for the settlement negotiations? Just being prudent? Smart man. Though I have to say, hiding assets from your wife during divorce proceedings, that's not very sporting. Graham's phone captured every word. I'm not hiding anything. Come on, Graham. We're both men of the world here. I know about the safety deposit box, the cash withdrawals, the gold coins. Wade's mask was slipping, revealing the calculating criminal underneath. Lydia deserves her fair share, don't you think? Lydia deserves exactly what she's earned. Wade's smile disappeared entirely. She's earned half of everything you own, and if you try to cheat her out of it, well, let's just say I have friends who specialize in helping people see reason. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Give Lydia what she deserves, or I'll take it myself. Take it how? Wade pulled out a knife, holding it casually at his side. The same way I've been taking everything else that should have been mine. Graham kept his phone steady, making sure the camera captured Wade's confession and the weapon. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was waiting this long. Do you have any idea how easy it's been? Your wife practically begged me to steal from you. Your daughter handed over your financial information like she was ordering pizza. Your own mother convinced everyone you were the problem. And now? Now, I take what I want and disappear. Lydia thinks we're going to Costa Rica together to start a new life. Sweet, isn't it? She has no idea I'll dump her at the airport once I've cleaned out your accounts. Graham heard footsteps approaching from multiple directions, the FBI moving into position. You won't get away with this, Graham said. Wade laughed. I've been getting away with it for years. The only difference is now I'm graduating from corporate theft to personal robbery. Thanks to your family's cooperation, I know exactly where every penny is hidden. FBI, drop the weapon! Wade spun around, seeing federal agents emerging from behind parked cars with guns drawn. His face went through a rapid transformation, confusion, understanding, and finally rage. You set me up, he snarled at Graham. You set yourself up the moment you decided to destroy my family. Wade lunged forward with the knife, but two agents tackled him before he could reach Graham. The weapon clattered across the concrete as Wade was wrestled to the ground and cuffed. Wade Kestrel, one agent announced. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and attempted robbery. You have the right to remain silent. Graham watched as they dragged Wade away, the man's curses echoing through the parking garage. The recording on his phone had captured everything: the threats, the confession, the attempted assault. Wade had just provided enough evidence to guarantee a lengthy federal prison sentence. Eleanor appeared at Graham's side as the FBI vehicles departed. "How do you feel?" she asked. Graham considered the question. "Empty, but not broken." "What about Lydia?" "What about her?" Graham drove home to find Lydia's car in the driveway. She was sitting on the front steps, tears streaming down her face, clutching her phone. "They arrested Wade," she said without looking up. "The FBI came to his apartment and dragged him away in handcuffs. They said he was a criminal, a thief." Graham sat down beside his wife, maintaining careful distance between them. "I know. You knew this would happen. I knew Wade was using you. I tried to warn you." Lydia finally looked at him, her eyes red and swollen. "He said he loved me. He said we were going to build a life together. He said whatever he needed to say to gain access to our money. You were never a person to him, Lydia. You were a target. I destroyed everything for nothing." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Our marriage, our family, my relationship with the girls. All for a man who was planning to abandon me." Graham felt a flicker of sympathy, but it died quickly. "You destroyed everything because you chose to. Wade didn't force you to have an affair. He didn't make you mock me to my own mother. He didn't compel you to turn our daughters against me. I thought you didn't love me anymore. I loved you enough to work 60-hour weeks to pay for this house. I loved you enough to put 2 daughters through college. I loved you enough to take care of your medical bills and your car payments and your credit card debt, but apparently that wasn't the kind of love you wanted." Lydia was quiet for a long time, watching traffic pass on Chapel Street. "What happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices. Are you going to divorce me?" Graham pulled out his phone and showed her the recording of Wade's confession. "Listen to this. Pay attention to what he says about dumping you at the airport." Lydia listened with growing horror as Wade's voice explained his plan to rob them and abandon her. When the recording ended, she was sobbing again. "He never loved me," she whispered. "No, he didn't. And you'll never forgive me." Graham stood up and looked down at his wife. "Forgiveness isn't the issue. Trust is. You chose to betray everything we built together. You involved our children in your deception. You enlisted my own mother to help destroy our marriage. Even if I could forgive you, I could never trust you again. So that's it? 23 years of marriage over?" 23 years of marriage ended the moment you decided Wade Kestrel was more important than your family. What's happening now is just paperwork." Graham went inside, leaving Lydia on the steps. He had phone calls to make and documents to prepare. The legal process would take months, but the emotional work was already finished. His phone rang as he was gathering divorce papers from his desk. Marissa's name appeared on the screen. "Dad, I heard about Wade's arrest. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Are you?" "I feel like an idiot. I can't believe I helped him plan to rob you." "You were manipulated by a professional con artist. Don't blame yourself for that." "What about Mom? How is she handling this?" Graham looked out the window at Lydia, still sitting on the front steps like a lost child. "Your mother is learning that actions have consequences." "Dad, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but is there any chance you and Mom could work things out? Maybe with counseling or—" "No," Graham said firmly. "There's no going back from this. Your mother made choices that can't be undone." "What about us? Are you going to cut me and Carly off too?" Graham was quiet for a moment. "That depends on you. If you want a relationship with me, you'll have to earn it back. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more choosing sides. If you can do that, we can rebuild something. I want to try. Then we'll try." After hanging up, Graham called Carly at college. The conversation was similar: shock about Wade's arrest, guilt about her role in the family's destruction, and a desperate desire to repair her relationship with her father. "I never wanted you and Mom to get divorced," Carly said. "I just wanted everyone to be happy." "Sometimes happiness requires difficult choices," Graham replied. "Your mother chose short-term pleasure over long-term commitment. Now she's discovering the price of that decision. Will you ever be able to forgive her?" "I don't know. But forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. Even if I could forgive your mother, I could never trust her again. And marriage without trust is just 2 people sharing a mortgage." The divorce proceedings took 8 months. Wade was convicted on multiple federal charges and sentenced to 12 years in prison. Eleanor testified as a key witness, helping prosecutors demonstrate a pattern of financial fraud spanning Wade's entire adult life. Lydia fought the divorce initially, claiming temporary insanity and begging for another chance. When Graham's lawyer presented evidence of the affair, including Wade's recorded confession and plans to rob them, she stopped fighting and accepted a modest settlement. "She gets the house," Graham explained to Eleanor as they reviewed the final papers. "I get the business, the savings, and my freedom. Do you regret any of it?" Graham considered the question. "I regret trusting people who didn't deserve it. I regret not seeing the warning signs earlier. But I don't regret defending myself when they tried to destroy me." The final confrontation came at the settlement conference, where all parties met to sign paperwork and divide assets. Lydia arrived with her lawyer, looking older and more fragile than Graham remembered. Joan accompanied her, wearing the martyred expression of someone who considered herself the real victim. "Graham," Joan said as they waited for the proceedings to begin, "I hope you're satisfied with what you've done to this family." "What I've done? You've destroyed everything. Your marriage, your daughter's respect, your own mother's love. Was your pride really worth all this pain?" Graham looked at the woman who'd raised him, who'd taught him right from wrong, who'd encouraged his wife to commit adultery. "My pride?" Graham's voice was dangerously quiet. "You think this is about pride? I think this is about a stubborn man who couldn't accept that his wife needed more than he could give. What she needed was a federal criminal who planned to rob us and abandon her in a foreign country." Joan's face flushed. "Wade made mistakes, but his feelings for Lydia were genuine." Graham pulled out his phone and played Wade's recorded confession, the part where he described his plan to dump Lydia at the airport once he'd stolen their money. Joan listened in growing horror. When the recording ended, she was silent. "Those were Wade's genuine feelings," Graham said. "He saw Lydia as a useful idiot, a target, a way to steal everything I'd worked for while convincing her it was romance." "You don't understand," Joan said weakly. "Lydia was unhappy. She needed to honor her commitments. She needed to act like an adult. She needed to remember that marriage is work, not entertainment." Joan straightened her spine. "You were never good enough for her." Graham stared at his mother, this bitter old woman who'd poisoned his marriage out of spite and jealousy. "You're right," he said finally. "I wasn't good enough for someone who could betray 23 years of marriage for a few months of excitement with a career criminal. I was only good enough for someone who valued loyalty, honesty, and commitment. Apparently, that's not Lydia." The settlement was finalized without drama. Lydia signed the papers with shaking hands, officially ending their marriage. As they prepared to leave, she approached Graham one final time. "I know you'll never forgive me," she said quietly, "but I want you to know I'm sorry. Not just about Wade. I'm sorry about all of it, the lying, the betrayal, involving the girls. I was selfish and stupid, and I destroyed the best thing in my life." Graham looked at his ex-wife, this woman who'd shared his bed and his dreams for more than 2 decades. "I know you're sorry," he said. "But sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't undo betrayal. Sorry is just a word people use when they're facing consequences. Will you ever be able to forgive me?" "Maybe, someday. But I'll never forget what you're capable of when someone offers you something you think you want more than what you already have." Lydia nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Goodbye, Graham. Goodbye, Lydia." 6 months later, Graham was working in his new shop, a larger space downtown that Eleanor had helped him find. The business was thriving, with a waiting list of customers who appreciated his meticulous craftsmanship. Eleanor had become more than a business partner. Their relationship had developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared experience rather than passion and promises. They understood each other's wounds and carefully avoided repeating past mistakes. "Any regrets?" Eleanor asked one evening as they closed the shop together. Graham considered the question while locking up his tools. "I regret the years I wasted on people who didn't value what I offered, but I don't regret fighting back when they tried to destroy me." "What about your daughters?" "Marissa and I have coffee every Sunday. Carly calls twice a week. We're rebuilding slowly, carefully. They're learning to be adults instead of entitled children." "And Lydia?" Graham hadn't seen his ex-wife since the divorce. According to Marissa, she was living in a small apartment across town, working part-time at a retail store and struggling to pay bills without his financial support. "Lydia is learning to live with the consequences of her choices," Graham said. "That's not my problem anymore." They walked to their cars in comfortable silence. Graham's new life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. He surrounded himself with people who valued what he offered instead of constantly demanding more. As he drove home to the modest house he shared with Eleanor, Graham reflected on the wreckage of his old life. The marriage was dead. The family was fractured. His relationship with his mother was permanently severed. But he was free, free from lies and manipulation, free from people who saw him as an ATM with a pulse, free from the exhausting work of trying to please people who would never be satisfied. The clock on his dashboard read 7:47 p.m. In his old life, he would have been driving home to a wife who resented him, daughters who took him for granted, and a mother who undermined everything he built. In his new life, he was driving home to a woman who appreciated his stability, respected his work, and understood the value of keeping promises. Graham pulled into his driveway and saw Eleanor waiting on the porch, a glass of wine in her hand and a genuine smile on her face. She waved as he approached, and he realized this was what contentment felt like. Not the desperate happiness of constant stimulation, but the deep satisfaction of being valued for who he was, rather than what he could provide. His phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, his heart clenched, thinking it might be Lydia with another apology or request for help. Instead, it was a message from a new client who'd heard about his work from a satisfied customer. Another commission, another opportunity to create something beautiful and lasting. Graham showed the message to Eleanor as they went inside. "Congratulations," she said, kissing his cheek. "Your reputation is spreading." "Good reputations take time to build," Graham replied, "but they're worth the effort." He thought about Wade Kestrel, sitting in a federal prison cell, probably planning his next con for when he was released in 12 years. He thought about Lydia, alone in her apartment, maybe wondering if the excitement had been worth the price. He thought about Joan, bitter and isolated, having destroyed her relationship with her only son for the sake of meddling in other people's lives. They had all chosen immediate gratification over long-term value. They had all prioritized their desires over their commitments. They had all learned too late that some prices are too high to pay. Graham poured himself a bourbon and sat in his favorite chair, listening to the gentle tick of the antique clock Eleanor had given him for his birthday. Each second marked time passing, moments that couldn't be recovered or replayed. But time moved forward, not backward. The future was unwritten, full of possibilities for people wise enough to learn from their mistakes and strong enough to defend what they'd built. Graham raised his glass in a silent toast to the wreckage of his old life and the promise of his new one. Time, he'd learned, was the most valuable thing a person could give someone else. He'd wasted decades giving his time to people who didn't appreciate it. He wouldn't make that mistake again. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 8 times, its deep notes resonating through the quiet house. Graham smiled and took Eleanor's hand as they watched the sun set through the kitchen window. Some clocks could be repaired when they broke. Others had to be scrapped and replaced with something better. Graham had finally learned the difference.